Do you sometimes wonder how you could truly have an impact when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? How do you know you are moving in the right direction when it comes to becoming a more inclusive individual? As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod brings topics such as ethnicity, genders, sexuality, or religion on the table. We talk about research and science, but also emotions, feelings, and vulnerability. We discuss allyship, advocacy, and privilege. But most importantly, we talk action. Because without action, we stay still. And when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, stillness is never the answer. Welcome to As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod.
In this episode of As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod, I have the pleasure to welcome Carmel Irandoust. Until recently, and since she was appointed in July 2018, Carmel was Deputy Secretary General of the Baháí International Community in the Holy Land. The Deputy Secretary General supports the Office of the Secretary General acting on behalf of the Universal House of Justice, the International Governing Council of the Baháí Community in the conduct of its external affairs. Before assuming this position, Carmel worked for World Vision in Dublin, Ireland, in the field of advocacy and policy, promoting and defending the rights of children and young people to be active global citizens in building sustainable and peaceful societies. She also worked at the United Nations headquarters in New York, in the Department of Public Information, as well as in the Protocol and Liaison Service with the Office of the Secretary General. Carmel is the founder of Net Love, a consultancy agency promoting the values of equality, diversity, inclusion, justice, and peace by creating meaningful and thought-provoking spaces for schools, universities, and businesses. She holds a bachelor's degree in public and political communications from Paris University and a Master of Philosophy in International Peace Studies from Trinity College Dublin. I have the pleasure to be discussing with Carmel about what makes us human and how we show up in day-to-day conversations makes a huge difference on how inclusive we are with the people around us. Welcome to another episode of As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod.
Welcome to another episode of As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod. Today I have the great pleasure to welcome, I can say actually a very old friend, because we haven't talked to each other for a while, but we've known each other for a very long time. And I don't even want to say the number because I think it's going to scare everyone and probably mostly ourselves. But we were, I think, in kindergarten together, and then a little bit of primary school. So welcome, Carmel. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Julien, for having me. Thank you. And actually, I will drop the number. I think it has been over maybe, 35 years?
I think 35 years, yes.
In touch, so it's very special to find your kindergarten school friend, and it's very special. And to work now together is very special as well.
And what I love as well is that completely, I think, by chance, we talk about different topics, but very similar at the same time. And I think that's what we're going to dive into today. So before we go into that, actually, I'm going to start with my usual question. Carmel, what's your story?
I know that it's a tradition, this question of what's your story. But then I was reflecting earlier, just before our call, and I was like, actually, my story is your story. It's her story. It's his story. It starts the same and it ends the same. We're all born the same way, and we're all going to die and end up in the same place. So I thought then in the between, we will do it during the hour, together, about what is it exactly. But the beginning and the end is your story, her story, his story, our story together as humans. So I think that that's how I'm going to answer your question.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit more, because diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging is a topic that is close to you as well. When did you first become kind of passionate and interested in topics around diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, you know, the idea also to maybe define also what do I put behind diversity and what do I put behind inclusion, because I think that everyone has a different definition. And then I can maybe share, how it affected my life and how it started all. But behind the word diversity, I would use what you see in nature. So when you walk into a garden, you have a variety of flowers and a variety of plants, a variety of trees, a variety of smells. And so for me, this is what diversity means. No? And
Mm-hmm.
this diversity can be also associated with this idea of beauty. So for me, diversity is beauty. No? And so that's why it's so dear to me, because this is how I was raised, that wherever you are in a space, you must actually long for it, long for diversity. And if it's not there, well, you make your best to bring it up, because this is what beauty is about, no? And inclusion has to do really um, with togetherness. So that's also something that I was raised, these principles that I was raised with, which are this idea of together we are stronger, no? There is no strength without unity, and that the diversity is really beauty.
And so when did it all start for you?
Yeah, so I was actually raised in Paris, France, and I was born in Morocco, in Casablanca. My parents actually left Casablanca when I was 2 years old, and my sister was 20 days old. And we moved as political refugees in Paris, in France. And so I think that you always had a sense of belonging, but not really. And so, so it has been interesting for us to grow up in a very French Parisian neighborhood and to be the few ones that were different, So we had maybe one or two, black friends, and then a few that were very dark haired and, with big eyebrows, and very, very few diversity, really, I must say. But now that you look back, you can see even in the school photos. So growing up like that and having your parents telling you that you all belong to one human family, that we were created noble in our essence, and that really we have to try to not only honor our dignity, but the dignity of everyone that's around you. This is where, it really started. And also one thing that my parents taught me is really that all the religions come from one source, no? Not only that we're one humanity, but that all the religions come from one God. And this is actually the principles of the Bahá'í faith. And so that's how I was raised. And this is an effort, that everyone tried to make when they believe in these principles, to try to apply it and implement it.
Amazing. And so we're now, yes, as you said, 30 plus years after these times when we both were raised in the same neighborhood. And it's true that actually we always think about France and definitely Paris as a quite diverse environment, but it's not the case everywhere. I mean, you do see the diversity around you, but you have these pockets where it is still very French. And so we're now 30 something years later, and reflecting back and seeing where you are now and where you want to go. What do you feel is your mission in life now?
It's funny you said that. I think that what this idea of mission and what's your mission really, I think, was born in my heart when I was in South America, in Bolivia, when I was 20. And so it really struck me that I met some women who were 20 years old, the same age as I was when I went there for a year doing volunteering work. And they were looking like so old, they were indigenous friends, and the sun had burned their faces, and their hands were very they were used a lot, in the camp, in the countryside, and they had children. And I was looking at them and I was like, what happened that they were born where they are born and I was born where I was born, and yet our lifestyle is so different. And this idea of loving mankind and loving people for what they are and seeing all these commonalities but yet so many differences, something happened where I decided at that moment that I must focus my energy on bringing this idea of togetherness, no? And this idea that we
Hmm.
all belong to one human family. Actually, there's a quote that really inspired me. So, with your permission, I will share it with you.
Yes, of
And it
course.
says, may your minds be ever bent upon the needs of the communities to which you belong, the condition of the societies in which you live, and the welfare of the entire family of humanity, to whom you are all brothers and sisters. And so this is actually a quote from the Bahá'í writings, and this really makes sense. And so guess what? My entire life has been focused on this. No,
Hmm.
how can I do this in practicality, but also conceptually? And so yeah, so that's how it has been, so far. My career choices, my different, even the friends that I have, or the spaces where I'm in, I always try to be mindful of this, and conscious of this reality that we are all really part of the same human fabric, and that although you can get really frustrated with people at your workplace or wherever you are, well, you actually do belong to the same, you know, same mess.
Yep, very true. And so you started talking a little bit about your some of the choices you've made in life, including your career choices. Um, what has been some of the challenges that you've had um, throughout your life, whether again at work or not at work in in your personal life, that has made who you are now?
Yeah. So, some of the challenges that I encountered, because every choices I made and every place I've been, whether it was at the United Nations, in the headquarters in New York City, or with World Vision Ireland, which was a couple of years ago here in Dublin. Enfin, not here because I'm now in Northern Ireland, but in Dublin in the south. Um, yeah, every single time that I've encountered a challenge, I said to myself, I have to take the bullet because I chose it. So I've
Hmm.
never been in a place that I didn't love, you know? So then when you take the challenges up front, you're like, okay, well, I chose it. So now just take it, and go with it. But every challenge that I encountered, to a certain extent, I always try to see, well, how can I try to diffuse these principles that I'm talking about, which are the hardest really. So, for
Hmm.
example, at the United Nations, I remember, I hope this colleague is not watching, but if she is, it's okay. So, I remember at the United Nations, I had very much so some challenges with this colleague of mine, and I was just like, I just can't deal with that. Oh, what am I going to do? And I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I was crying. I went to see the boss and I said, it's becoming personal, I cannot do my work anymore. Anyway, so this boss said, oh, I'll take care of it. And at some point, I could see that this person was trying to make effort, but they were actually pushing me far away from her, more than
Hmm.
getting closer to her. And so a friend of mine at this point said, Carmen, sometimes people are socially awkward. Don't think that actually this person wants to harm you. Maybe actually they're just socially awkward. And then as soon as this person said that, I hung up the phone and I had some chocolate in my drawer. And I called her and said, do you like white chocolate? She's like, I love white chocolate. So I went to actually give her some white chocolate. And then guess what, Julien? We became such good friends. And we went to some restaurants together and shared the love of mussels. And so the thing is that now people are going to say, oh, yeah, of course, if I offer chocolate to this colleague that I don't like, it's not going to happen. But the thing is that the idea is to try to see what is it that unites you, no? What is
Hmm.
what is the common ground that make you, connect? So if it's and God knows that it was very personal, sometimes the things she was doing. But the thing is that then you have to try to find what connects you with the other, no? With the other. So this in this particular case, it was chocolate. So all around, all across the path that I've had, and this is in the one-to-one. No, I'm not even talking about womanhood and what a woman in an environment of men and things, but about the one-to-one. It's always trying to find, okay, what are some of the things that makes us connect. As I said.
So I guess that's one of the tips maybe we'll remember, which is to always have chocolate
I
handy
know.
just in case. Although this is clearly not the main lesson here, But yeah, I love that story, and I think we tend to forget, as you said, sometimes that we all have that common purpose that unites us, and sometimes, and I think the problem probably is that sometimes it's a little bit hard to find it, and we need to dig a little bit deeper, and we look at this bigger picture where we see it's the other. I'm so different to that person. There is nothing that we have in common. But actually, I think in any conversations where there, especially when there is that element um, of disagreement, maybe, or we're not on the same wavelength. We need to find actually and work maybe a bit harder to find that element that unites us, because there are so many things in there as well, like the emotions are obviously are there, the stakes might be high as well, especially in the work environment. What does that mean for my job, or whatever, how my boss is going to see me? But ultimately, I think this is a beautiful lesson of how do you maybe start very simple to
Yes.
connect with people, so you can finally see what's really behind and how you get to that same common purpose, common denominator that brings that belonging, and not
Yes.
just that those differences.
Yes. And I think we actually yesterday I was looking at something on LinkedIn. A friend of mine, she's she's doing this this podcast on LinkedIn, and she was explaining that it has to do with motives. You know, what's the motive? What's the desire of your heart? If the
Hmm.
desire of your heart is to really to have a good environment, a good workplace, and to understand that as when you are together, you can work better. You see, because we hear that, oh, you spend so much time at work and your colleagues are those who you spend the most hours, but it's true, it's really true. So do you want to have a miserable life in your workplace, or do you actually want to see that everyone can actually work together, even if you have different of opinion? I'm not talking about something where everyone agrees all the time and everybody kumbaya, it's not like that. But the truth is that when you respect each other, when you admire each other and the different capacities and talents that one colleague may have, even though they can actually frustrate you very much so, the thing is that you understand that your work will be only successful, truly, and sustainable when you actually get along. So I think that when the desire of your heart is really to try to connect, you'll find ways. You see, it can take a long time or it can take a little time, but it has to do with your motivation. What's the motivation behind it?
Hmm.
To be well seen by others, or to really understand that I cannot be a good employee, or I cannot be a businessman or businesswoman or entrepreneur unless and until I have a network of people, which I like to call net love, a net love of people.
Well, I'm definitely going to come back to that one, because that's an important part of your life now, and there is so much to unravel. But one thing I wanted to actually add on to that, which it made me think about that when you talked about it now, is in coaching. There's an amazing exercise we do, which is to look at the hero in people.
Mm.
And the interesting thing we do is we often start with pick someone you really get along with, you respect, you value, and look at them as the hero. And that exercise tends to be very easy for most people. It could be a parent, or it could be a very good friend, or a teacher we work with. And if you value them very positively, then yeah, it's very easy to see them as heroes. But then we do the same exercise with someone they really struggle with, and it could be either someone they have met and worked with as well, or actually someone, maybe some of these kind of dictators that we've had in the world, or people who are not necessarily seen as good people. And we do the same exercise and trying to find, okay, how can I see them as heroes?
Mhm.
And it is a difficult exercise, but it creates that mindset, as you said, of if I want to enter the relationship in a way where I'm going to respect the person and I'm going to see them as a hero, then suddenly the whole dynamic is changed very quickly.
Yes, it's interesting. I've never heard that before. I was always taught, no, that to try to see the divine, no, which
Mm-hmm.
is something that I'm very far from doing. Huh? But how can you, should you actually, in a spiritual manner, like can you actually see the divine in them, and recognize that this light that they have is the same light that you have? That's why I was telling you, we all have the same story, actually, really, So we are all really on this planet. We're all in the same boat, like truly we are. And now climate change and all these problems and all these issues that we have, the pandemic and everything really prove us that we are all in the same boat. And that the well-being of one is the well-being of all, that the discomfort of one is actually the discomfort of all. So within a workplace, I think it's the same. You see, sooner or later it will come to you. Do you remember, Julien, that in France, in few companies actually there has been a lot of suicides? No, do you remember that time where in some very specific companies actually it was interesting, in one office, people were actually starting to commit suicide, and you're like, what's happening, And in France, also in the media, it was a bit hush hush. It was more seen as oh wow, look, that happened again. But no one really delved into it to see, but why then? How is it that these people are actually in such a place that they actually commit suicide, and they all have something in common? They're all part of the same company. It's actually very sad, no, to think that, and I think we just brushed it. Remember?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think this is where we forget that actually the power of talking about it, or at least because I think there is an element as well where people need to want to talk about it, but at least having that space for people to have that conversation if they want to have that conversation, because I can totally understand that it's not easy for anyone to discuss about topics like this. I mean, in the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we always talk about that psychological space for people to feel that they can discuss, that they can open up, that they can raise issues that they have or concerns that they have. So it's not that we should force people to talk about it, but it's about giving them that space to do it if they feel like they need to do it. And
this idea of belonging, you belong to a certain framework, which from 9 to 5, it's actually this company. You belong, no? And then you belong to the human race. You belong to your family, that is your whatever partner and children, whatever it is, your parents, your brothers and sisters. You belong. This idea of belonging, I think, is very important. So that's what I try to do, and I think that's what you try to do as well with your podcast, not to remind us that we all do belong, and we have different talents and capacities that we offer to this common place, that we live in just for a short period of time. Short.
That is very true, actually. But let's not dive too much into the shortness of our lives. Let's enjoy it now. But I'm gonna come back to a point one word you used earlier, because I think it's an important part to dive into, which is that net love, which I believe is also the name of your company now. So tell us a little bit more about that net love, what it means to you. You mentioned already a little bit about the network part, but what's really behind it?
Yeah, this word actually was born when I was living in New York City, and I was talking to a friend, and I was telling her that I just finished now my master in peace studies, and I'm now, to kind of start to have a new path in front of me. And she kept talking about network, and I'm like, in my life I've never really worked in a place that I didn't love, with people that I didn't love, kind of. So the idea of net love came to try to go against this idea of networking and to just create a relationship with people that are superficial, no? So then I went and worked then for World Vision Ireland, and then I went to the Holy Land, and I was working there for a number of years. But this idea of creating something around that concept of net love always was with me. And so then during the pandemic, I created this company called Net Love, and it's a consultancy agency actually that tried to promote these values, of peace, of unity, of diversity, of inclusion. And so it creates spaces, in companies, in schools, in university, and we try to, explore these themes that we have explored so far together, which is about our humanity. How do we challenge prejudices, but also agree and acknowledge that we all have them, but that they also stop our progress as humans if we give too much room to them. So how do we challenge them together, no? And then how do we see actually that together we are stronger in a company, in school, in a university again? So I've been doing that and also doing some consultancy gigs, with different children rights organizations and working more on my own, doing research for them and consultancy work. But I'm very excited about this network because now it's picking up, slowly but surely. So that's cool.
And one of the I would say topics or questions that keeps coming back on your website and on some of the things you talk about on social media is what it means to be human and what makes us humans. So what have you discovered so far?
That's such a big question.
It is a big question, yes. So I'll let you go into whatever direction you feel is the right one to start with, and then we can
yeah,
dive in.
yeah. So one thing that I discovered is really with the help of um, a documentary that I really love truly, and it's called Human, the movie. And it's by Yann Arthus Bertrand, and it's this compilation of different interviews done by people from around the world, different creeds, different backgrounds, different religions, different nationalities, and they right straight look at you in your eyes, and they start to talk about what they think about poverty, love, life after death, homosexuality, um, um, what else? Or war, peace, things like that. And so it has been very interesting because what I discovered so far about our humanity, when humans in the room watch these humans in the screen, is again, without sounding too, this idea of love. People just look right in the eyes of the people and they recognize such beauty. You remember what I was saying about diversity earlier, diversity and beauty?
Yep.
You can see people looking at this documentary and thinking how beautiful humanity is. And so that to me is fascinating because I've never met one person who actually said that this documentary is not something that is amazing. But it's because it's a mirror, you see, it's a perfect mirror that reflects the light of humanity before you. And so I think that once you get that and once you connect with this, you never are the same again because you remember that the oneness of mankind is your true identity, you see. Now you can have different labels, I'm not saying, but that's something for me very interesting to notice. Yeah.
That's interesting. Actually, I haven't had a chance to watch the movie, so that's definitely something I'll go and have a look at.
Yeah, and then we through this also you explore, no, that yeah, you can see that people are really then wondering, yeah, okay, but then what? So you have some people in the room that are actually very much so trying to challenge. And then when I asked them, I said, now you're challenging this. Is it you who think this? No, because they're like, yeah, okay, that's very nice to be all united and all, but what about this and what about that? And I said, when you talk like that with this tone, do you believe in it or what is it? She's like, no, but I know that people out there say that about that it's not that easy to work together. It's not that easy. And I said, but this person is not in the room now, Like I don't need the devil's advocate to be here because it is not here, We have to go with our guts. And if our guts tend to unite and to work together, then let's do it. But there's also one person who said, which I loved, that it's the first time I'm in a place where I can actually disagree with people and it's okay. Yeah, exactly. We are here to actually talk and to disagree with one another. But remember that how do we make it work? How do we remember that we're all part of the same fabric and that we must do things about it,
True, very true. And so, linking some of the work you've done and some of the experiences you've had and the people you've seen, I mean, you have beautiful stories there. What are kind of the top pieces of advice or things you've noticed that actually help me, for example, as an individual, be more inclusive, have and create a better sense of belonging around me. What are some of these kind of nuggets of gold that you've seen throughout your experiences?
Yeah. I think it has to do a bit with what you were sharing earlier about trying to see the hero in everyone.
Mhm.
But more so, and I've learned it the hard way as well when I was actually um, this past few years, is that whoever you encounter may have 10 defects and one quality, but you have to stress upon the point of the one quality.
Mhm.
Whoever you meet will have 10 qualities and one defect. And you have to actually focus on the one defect. No, I'm joking. It's not sure the 10 qualities. So the thing is that everyone has something to offer, you
Mhm.
see? And so it's a matter, as you said, to try to go through the layers and try to see, well, what is this person can offer and how can we actually work together and connect? I think that that's something that I really learned the hard way. And because there are so many layers that are super frustrating sometimes, you know? And because it's easy to like someone that you like already, but it's very hard to like someone you don't like, isn't
Mhm.
it? Or that you don't know even.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's to try to see the quality in everyone, the one quality that they may have. And then also another thing that I grew up with and that I try to apply, which is very hard also, is to see that we all have gems of inestimable value, and
Mhm.
that it's only through having this conversation and deepening our consciousness and understanding, to not say to be educated, no, that we can try to untap these gems and this of inestimable value. That's why, you know, when we're children or when I am with young people, you know, they may think that they may take this route or that route to be able to be successful. And even successful, we're not even talking together about what they mean by successful. You know,
Mhm.
everybody has different definitions. But my point is to say that if the desire of your heart is actually lofty and you really want to make a difference in your life and in the life of your community, whether you take a left or a right, you still get where you need to go. You know, that's what life has taught me. So that's one tip as well, an additional one that I have discovered so far is that you may make a detour, no, to get to
Mhm.
wherever you want to go and to be,
Yeah.
but regardless, you'll still be there. Um, and also another thing that I've noticed is that if you truly love someone, you sometimes don't need to say because your actions will show.
Mhm.
And if you truly dislike someone and you tell them you love them, they will know that you actually really don't like them. So that's again this idea of being true to yourself, no? And to not try to pretend to be something you're not. And if you actually have challenge with this person, as we went back again onto the beginning, and if you really dislike them, well, try to see the good in them, you know,
Mhm.
which may sound a cliche, but it's true. If not, your life is miserable. I've tasted that as well.
And you're right. And I think here, what is interesting point you're making is that it is that the fact that ultimately the only thing we can control and the only person we can control and the only emotions we can control are ours.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's about making that conscious choice that if we really want to be in a place where, I don't know, we're happy, or as you said, in love, or whatever that kind of renewing emotion is, that's we're the only ones who can make that happen, and we need to make that conscious choice for
yes.
it to happen.
But then, Julien, you know, it's a choice and it's a free will that we have. But also, it's like, how do you create an environment that is conducive to that
Mhm.
choice as well? No? How do you make that this choice can become implemented? Why do you think that so much yoga and Pilates and classes online and on apps and stuff has been now being more and more prominent? You know, the it's not only the gym anymore. It's even more so about this well-being and wellness
Mhm.
and candles and flowers and beauty. Surround yourself with beauty and respect your body. And you know, when I could speak about yoga, that people will not feel threatened by it. But if I start to talk about God or about spirituality, then people start to say, nah. You're like, no, but come on. Like, if you have your candle, your flowers, and a yoga mat, I can put a prayer book next to it, no? And for me, this is what this is really what inspired my heart, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is that everyone can create an environment that is conducive to thinking, to reflecting about your own action, whether you want to put God in it or not. I put God in it because this gives me strength. No,
Mm-hmm.
I put prayers in it because for me these are words that I cannot myself use, and I feel that they align with my wishes. But also you have your own words, which is fine. But I think that it's important to, and people say, no, scientists have said, and many research have said that usually when a little bit in the morning and a little bit at night, you take this time to process and reflect
Mm-hmm.
about what has happened during the day. This helps you as a human being to really process things. You know, there's a quote that I was raised with that says, bring thyself to account each day. No?
Mm-hmm.
Ere thou art summoned to a reckoning. So obviously it has to do with, when you die, you're going to have to actually perhaps give a bit of how do you say, a bit of a bilan, no? How do you say?
Yeah, like it's an account of your
Yeah,
life,
you're gonna have to
effectively.
bring
Yeah.
yourself to account. Like,
Yeah.
so I was telling this lady, her name is Kukita. She's from Cuba. When I was in Arizona, and I met her, and I said, Kukita, what do you think about this idea of bringing yourself to account each day? And she's like, it's like cleaning your house. Every day you have to do a little bit, because if you wait
Mm-hmm.
too long, it's just gonna be a whole mess. And I was like, Kukita, I never thought of it. And unfortunately, she passed away now. But I will never forget that she was saying it's like cleaning your home. Why do you clean your home regularly and you think
Mm-hmm.
that your mind you don't need? No? So that was great.
I love the image. It's a really, really nice image indeed, because I mean it makes it very, very concrete at the end of the day. And
Yeah,
as you said, it's about doing it, I think, in a way where it works for you as an individual.
exactly. Yeah.
For me, the image, and especially when you were talking about yoga and meditation and things like that, is when I started my coach training and my journey as a coach, I would hear everywhere around me a lot of people saying, "Oh, you need to spend time meditating and so on." And I tried and I hated it
Yes.
because I was doing it in a way that didn't work for me.
Yes.
And my journey actually was, how do I bring that time for myself, for reflection,
Yes.
for that daily accounting in a way that works for me?
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be yoga. It doesn't have, as you said, to be with a prayer book. It doesn't have to be meditating as such. It could simply be, I don't know, taking the dog out for a
Yes. A
walk
walk in
on your
nature.
own in
Yes,
nature.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's exactly that. It's about finding what really works for you, but
Yeah.
making the time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And regularly as well. Because
Hmm.
sometimes you don't feel good
Yep.
after a certain time and you're like, why am I not feeling good? And then you're like, I forgot, no, to actually
Hmm.
continue this sort of discipline, because it asks for discipline, the same way we eat every day to stay
Hmm.
alive. Well, you need to have a certain
It's a
discipline.
habit.
So that's, yeah, I also, I'm learning. I think the older we get, the more we can see somehow that that's actually wise to do these things, no? To do these walks in nature, to have meaningful conversations,
Mm.
to be with the people we love, to tell them we love them, but also this idea of introspectively also reflect on your own actions and words
Um,
and deeds. Yeah.
So I'm moving a little bit away from. I mean, it was a beautiful conversation, but I really want
Yeah.
to hear a little bit as well of the other side. What in the role you have now and the work you're doing? You mentioned about different organizations, different people. What are some of the challenges as well that you've encountered?
I just started now with NetLove, so it's a bit difficult now to talk about the challenges. It's too fresh for me to share. What I can tell you is that when it was born in the middle of the pandemic, which we're still in, mind you, we're
Hmm.
still in a pandemic. But it was last April, a few months ago. It was very difficult for me to move in a new country and to live here and to not have a position per se, and have income per se. And I can tell you that, yeah, it really took every single energy of mine that I had within me to bring it out, and to give
Hmm.
birth to this organization. Because if it was not for my family and for my close friends, I don't know how I would have made it, you know. Again, it has to do with, you know, the system that we live in and how it helps you to really flourish and
Mm-hmm.
prosper. That was one of the biggest challenges that I encountered here in Northern Ireland. It took me 6 months, I would say, maybe, to start to actually look at the social services around me to say, well, how can I be helped, you know, financially? Because I really
Mm-hmm.
thought I would have found a job by the time I arrived and no problem. And yes, of course, I've never had problems with interviews. It's going to rock. And actually it didn't work out. So then I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do now? So then, yeah, I had family and friends helping because the social services here were not helping.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I started after 6 months and made the decision, I'm going to go towards the social services and ask to be helped, the idea and the reason they didn't was, you are here as a tourist. We're not going to give you any money for you to be able to subsist. So then I was like, well, how is it possible? So I think 3, 4 times I asked the social services to help. And then I was thinking, my God, how are people doing when they actually don't have this net, no, to help them?
Mm-hmm.
Again, this idea of net love, no? The people who love you are here as a net to help
Yep.
you. And so it's actually in the middle of the month of April that I was like, you know what? I don't find a job. God knows that I have many interviews. Usually I never have any problems. It's not flying. Let me just start this thing. So I was on my bed and I started it. The day I made this decision, Julien, for this company, I was contacted by a child and youth organization from the Republic of Ireland saying, do you remember we worked together so well a few years ago? Would you like to work with us again? Yes, of course, let's do. And so then this is how things started. But I think the challenge really had to do with the systems of governance, you know, that we're
Mm-hmm.
surrounded with. And yet I know some people that may actually benefit from social services in different countries, you see, at the same time. And you're like, you know, like that's not cool. That's really not cool. But I'm very grateful, you know, for those who helped me, you know, for these few months that were very hard. And yeah, anyway, so that was a big challenge for me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Now, net love wise, again, we just started, so I cannot really talk about it. But the before was pretty challenging for sure.
Well, looking forward to hear how it's going, and I'm sure you're going to be very, very successful. Looking forward to see everything you're gonna roll out.
Thank you.
Um, just to kind of close up our conversation, because we had so many really, really interesting moments and interesting thoughts here. What is one thing you would want to leave us with?
Um, you know, if there's one message that I can share, really is um, trying to think that there's no time to lose. That there's really no time to lose, and that we actually should fulfill the destiny that was given upon us as humans, which is to be good, to do good, to live good, and to with us, with ourselves, with our children, with everyone, you know. And so I think, yeah, I think there's no time to lose for that. Whatever it means for you, no? Good, whatever it means, just put whatever definition you want. I don't
Mhm.
care. Just that. There's no time to lose.
Thank you so much for these inspiring words. I think to finish
No,
this
thank you for having
episode.
me, Julien. Thank you.
The final question I want to ask you is if anyone wants to reach out to you, talk more about all these topics. I mean, on your website, you have a number of areas I think we could have gone into, and
Oh,
we only have that much time, but I'm sure we can organize another episode at some point and go into other topics. So, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
sure. You can find me on netlove.org. You can find me on netlove22, which is on Facebook. There's a Facebook group. On Instagram, netlove.original. On Twitter, netlove16. And then through you, I guess, if other people want to
Mhm.
connect, they're welcome to connect through you. But yeah, I mean, I would love to actually, if you have any ideas, if you want to collaborate, if you want to cooperate, move this message and this movement forward, please feel free. I was telling you that I'm really starting Net Love. Now I'm the department actually of children, inclusion, diversity and youth of Ireland is now funding a project of mine in 10 secondary schools in Ireland, in County Galway. So that's very exciting, to try to explore this concept with young people. So if ever anyone has some ideas and want to work on them, we can do that together.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much again. Thank you for being part of this
Thank
episode.
you.
It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And looking forward to having you again in the future.
Merci.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. We'd love to hear from you. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.